Everybody, it's Eddie Brill here for OG Chat, which is a form of OG Talk. We have this great podcast on YouTube and all the different platforms for audio called OG Talk. The world has become a Twilight Zone episode and we're all inside our own houses, so we are adapting. We've created this thing called Behind Closed Doors, and we're lucky enough to have all kinds of guests. My co-host, as always, the owner of the Organic Grill, the OG, Vlad Grinberg.
Hey guys, how are you?
The VG and the OG, which is really great. We missed the restaurant like crazy. And his friend is our guest today. I'm meeting him for the first time. He's an incredible musician, a vegan as well. You looked up in the sky. I guess I can already tell that you don't like compliments, which is perfect because we're the same way. It's easy to give them, but hard to take them. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesse Leach, thanks for coming and being part of our show. Yay!
My pleasure.
You're a Rhode Island boy.
I spent a good chunk of my life in Rhode Island, yeah.
And then Massachusetts as well?
No, I've just had bands in Massachusetts. I've always commuted.
Yeah, I started, I'm from New York, but I started my comedy in Boston. And I knew you'd worked on some project where the Farrelly brothers were involved, or Farrelly brothers have written. And if you're from Rhode Island, you've been in a Farrelly brothers movie.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, they're kind of extended family. My uncle's a director, and he's done a couple of independent films. So I grew up on movie sets, and I grew up around wise guys, and very much Rhode Island. In big parts of me are definitely still very much a part of Rhode Island as well. Yeah, it's my roots.
Yeah, there's a lot of filming and a lot of the club in Rhode Island. The guys there was even some TV show, I think, about the Rhode Island mob or something like that for a while.
Yeah, we had our own boss, patriarchal. We had our own story, which has yet to be told, really. There's a podcast called, what the hell is that called? Something Crime Podcast, which is the first season is all about Rhode Island and Mayor Buddy Cianci. Highly recommended. I just can't remember the name of it. Something Crime Podcast.
Yeah, it's Something Crime. We'll just.
But it's really steeped in. People have no idea. It's a whole other world. It's very much steeped in mafia. Yeah,
right.
There's a huge chunk of that city that's completely run by the mob.
But also a phenomenal city. I've had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun in Providence. East Providence has the famous Comedy Connection and all that.
Yeah.
But so your life is, you grew up around a father who's a director. Does that got you?
My uncle, and my father's actually a minister, professor, and my uncle's a movie director. Yeah, I got stories for days, man.
Yeah. Well, let's hear about how, hanging around with your uncle and what that was like, watching film and seeing entertainment, because obviously you wanted to be an entertainer eventually.
Yeah. He was always into theater. When I was younger, he was part of the Trinity Repertory Theater. He went to school there, which is the famous theater there in Rhode Island. They put on great performances like every year, the Christmas Carol. They're really well known for that type of stuff. So I was always around theater. I actually was in theater from probably the age of 5 or 6 through high school. Drama club, like that was my thing. That's kind of how I gained my confidence and my ability to project my voice and have to be able to put on a persona and stuff was definitely all through theater. So my uncle was very active with that, and then I grew up being on movie sets and getting to meet people who were in this industry, and it's incredible because people who work on movies are very similar to people who work in music, very similar to people who work in bars and restaurants, comedians as well. Like, we're all kind of cut from the same cloth. So I grew up around very artistic freaks and geeks, and I became one of them because of it. I was so inspired by meeting these people and seeing their gypsy sort of lifestyle. And you go to a movie set, you show up in the afternoon, you're there till like 3, 4 in the morning. It was just, as a kid, that was so much fun to be a part of that. And to be able to get behind the lens and see my uncle call the shots and watch the filming happen and meet all the people around. Like, you had to ask for permission to film in certain areas, and my father took a break from the ministry, and he was actually a location manager for a few years. So I used to go around with dad and scout out locations, and so it's very much in and out of part of the theater world and the movie world growing up too, and still very much a part of like what I love. I love acting, I love theater, I love movies.
Well, there is a mathematical component to all of that: music, comedy, the rhythms, and you get that by hanging around. Like, you're in a group, you're putting together your different mathematical equations together, literally. But as far as, you know, being on a movie set, my brother and my nephew, my brother-in-law, you know, everyone is now in that business because we just grew up around it, and it's just so catching, and it's so you know, there's a phenomenon in that world. Vlad, you seem like you were going to
Yeah,
say
so I'm
something.
curious. Just take me back to this boy who was like kind of sandwiched between his father being a minister and being strict, and your uncle who is more like a free spirit,
Right.
gypsy style person. Like what this boy has experienced.
Yeah, there was definitely two different worlds growing up. For a good chunk of my childhood, my parents were Pentecostal, very strict Christians for, you know, because my dad he was an ex-hippie, he was an ex-biker, and was on his way to California, on his way to Tibet to become a Buddhist monk. He thought that was the way his life was going to go. He met a guy in the early 70s that told him about Jesus, and he lived on a commune up in Bakersfield, California,
Right.
where, you know, they get naked and they meditate and they do psychedelics and they find God, I guess. So his way of
Or at
kind
least
of,
they use that excuse to get
yeah.
naked.
So he very much became a born again Christian in the early 70s. And then my brother and I came along, and he met my mother, and we were raised very strictly where we couldn't listen to music outside of the Christian genre unless they had read the lyrics and screened it and made sure it was okay for us. We didn't eat our diet, which all ties into this too. Our diet consisted of non-refined sugars. We used to be part of a hippie co-op, so we ate a lot of lentils and a lot of vegetables and a lot of stuff that I hated for many years growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was a very strict upbringing, but I was highly educated. I learned Latin when I was a kid. I learned archery. We were poor. Poor. But because of my dad's connections to the Bible college, we went to a Christian academy. So my brother and I were the poor kids in a pretty well-to-do school. So we got a really good education. And that, you know, included reading and writing and arithmetic and all those things. So we were very well learned kids. Which,
yeah, I could tell that because, you know, the second band you had was Nothing Stays Gold, which is the Robert Frost
nothing
reference.
stays. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I knew when I saw that there was something there.
Yeah.
And,
I'm
you
a
know,
poet
S.C. Hinton, of
first.
course. Go ahead, you go, and then I'll.
No, I was going to say I'm a poet first and foremost, and I am a lyricist and a musician. Poetry was number one along with theater. And I loved Robert Frost growing up. I was just constantly in the books reading about him because his connection to nature, much like Emerson and Thoreau, those are all kind of my heroes.
Right, and that's like a 1923 poem that affected you in the 2023, you
Yeah.
know, maybe 100 years later. And then, you know, I know, you know, and now, of course, S.E. Hinton took that poem and created The Outsiders. I don't know if that was any part of your life.
Yeah, when I was actually able to see that movie when I was older, yeah. Again, very strict upbringing, so kind of a very filtered lens. But going to my uncle and the sort of world of art, I was very much exposed to that. And, you know, being in theater, you start to meet people who are of alternative lifestyles, which I wasn't used to. You start meeting people who are bohemians, people whose parents smoked pot and listened to the Beatles and like all this stuff. So to me, it was very like appealing to be part of that artistic world because I started to identify in myself. That's pretty much who I am. But I was torn. So at a certain age, and the one of the pivotal moments, I love to tell this story, having toured with Iron Maiden, my father found a cassette tape underneath my brother's bed, the Number of the Beast, 666, the Iron Maiden tape. And my brother and I got the Hellfire and Brimstone speech. My dad smashed the tape, and we were told it was the devil's music. And that kind of just made it even more appealing because it pissed my dad off so much.
That's hilarious.
So that was kind of the gateway for both me and my brother to really start smuggling tapes. And when my parents would go away to a prayer meeting or a Bible study at night, we would turn on, and Anthrax was another band, Crank and Anthrax, Iron Maiden, Run DMC, just anything we could get our hands on that was Beastie Boys, that was secular and that had swears in it. And we used to say the swears extra loud. Yeah, it's like the two kids from The Simpsons, you know, the Flanders kids, like discovering the devil's music. So that was kind of.
It's always what our parents tell us. We want to do the opposite. We want them to be right, but we do the opposite. I remember my mom. I asked her if I can go to a party. She said, "If you clean my closet, you can go to the party. And I said, can I listen to your album? She said, yes, you can listen to anything except the album Hair. And I had never, I didn't know anything about Hair, and I never would have listened to it. But the minute she left, the first album I took out of the closet and started playing was Hair, because you just want to go against what your parents say. What was the catalyst, you would say, I guess, that got you from being sort of the Christian childhood to the childhood you got to explore in?
Yeah, that would be punk rock music. I started getting into, like I had mentioned, the sort of heavy metal bands, but they were fun. I think I was too young to really identify with it. I thought it was fun music. I thought it was great. And I think Public Enemy was a gateway drug as well, because Scott Ian used to always wear the Public Enemy t-shirts on stage from Anthrax. So getting into Public Enemy, the idea of being revolutionary, the idea of going against the grain, and the fact that everything that I was raised to believe about this world, it started to fall apart before my eyes, because I started to recognize corruption as I listened to the lyrics of Chuck D from Public Enemy. But sonically, it was Minor Threat. A band called Minor Threat changed everything for me. And my girlfriend at the time, when I was just getting into high school, made a mixtape, and there was a bunch of bands on there. And I remember hearing Seeing Red by Minor Threat, and power, and you couldn't not listen to it. It was so jarring. It was so in your face that it stopped me dead in my tracks and made me realize, like, this kind of music is it for me. Because you put it on and it's not background music. It's music that overtakes you and beats you in the face with a message, short and sweet to the point, and you're left stunned. And I'm like, okay, that's what I want to do. So getting into punk rock, that was it, man.
And it looks like you choose the bands that kind of prioritized lyrics and word, not necessarily music only.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Absolutely. I'm still that way. I'm a total snob when it comes to message. Like, what are you saying and why are you saying it? I think that's the only reason I'm 41 years old still doing this, because it really means something to me. I put everything into my lyrics, and I look for that and stuff that I enjoy. If I'm going to put on some music, there's got to be a message there of uplifting, or of like something you can relate to, whether it's sadness or catharsis or just letting go. The written word is everything for me. So if you're a good lyricist, I'm already sold. If you have your heart into it, I'm already sold. So to me, punk rock was that. A lot of punk bands, just had that
and
love for the word.
To your credit, I can talk about my personal attitude toward your music, but it's always lyrics first. Like everybody I talk to, they often use words like, I can really identify myself with some of the songs of Killswitch Engage, with Time of Grace, and you really kind of carrying it through.
Yeah, I can't help it. It's sort of, I would say it's part of my upbringing too. I'm a son of a preacher, man. I just have a different message. It's not as organized or religious, but it's very much steeped in compassion and love. And I will definitely give that to my parents. As we've gotten older, they've loosened up a bit and aren't quite as hardcore when it comes to their religious beliefs. And I've seen a lot more of the message of love enter in, which is really what I cling to from my Christian upbringing, is believing that God is love, and the compassion and the relief you can get off of somebody sort of exuding that. Because I don't just write about it, I try to live it. I try to live and breathe that through my daily actions.
Right. And as much as you're rebelling against your parents, they were evolving. I'm on the outside looking in. I've never met you. All I see is them evolving, being sort of like a hippie, learning to find a religion, willing to go to Tibet to learn more, to go to Bakersfield to try something new. They, despite the fact that they put limitations on you, they were constantly evolving, and obviously they've evolved now.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and I it's good to say that too, because I have to give them a lot of credit for who they are.
And probably the biggest evolving of them will be going to Iron Maiden concert and enjoy it, right?
Yeah, funny story now that you've said that. To circle back to that, it was the catalyst for me being able to afford to help send them to Europe for a couple weeks on a cruise. My mom had never been to Europe. So I used my paycheck from that tour we did with Iron Maiden. And I remember the day I took my parents out to dinner, And I reminded my father of the story of smashing the Iron Maiden tape, and he sort of laughed like, "Oh yeah, I used to be like that." I said, "Well, if you remember, I just want you to know that Iron Maiden are going to help fund you guys go to Europe on a cruise." So ecstatic, and my dad laughed. And I got to tell Bruce Dickinson that story on the first day of our tour with Iron Maiden. And he sort of chuckled and said, "Well, tell your father that Number of the Beast is sort of a historical explaining of our view of the devil." And he really went off on this really great tangent, and I reworded it to my dad. It was amazing to be able to bring that message from Bruce Dickinson to my dad about that particular piece of music and how it was actually a very intellectual piece of music rather than a Hail Satan type thing.
Right. How did the music catch up to the lyrics? Like, you're a lyricist, you're a poet, but how now all of a sudden, you have this music you have to come up with. You have to, there are chords that need to be played.
Yeah. So for me, I've always been a writer. I've never attempted to pick up a guitar to write a song. I've always been gifted to work with people who had the music in them already. But yeah, when I first started writing punk rock, I dumbed down my lyrics, because at the time I thought, you got to be simple and to the point with punk. And the more I evolved, the more I realized that the message can still come across using bigger words, using bigger concepts. So it took a while for me. My first couple of bands were very sort of straight to the point. I'm upset, pissed off, shit ain't right in the world, to like really starting to, and I think Killswitch probably was the first band that I really sort of honed my craft and sort of found my stride of being able to write about questioning society, about knowing that things aren't right in the world, but also balancing that with a positive message of like, we can overcome this. There's always a positive to a negative. And in my lyric writing, I really strive to lay out something that may be the issue, the problem, the negative, and always try to find a solution. For the most part, most of my songs have a positive spin to them, like, we'll get through this, you're gonna be okay. And music has helped me with that. So the stuff I listen to that's given me that hope, has given me that message. I'm just doing my best to be an instrument to pass that on to other people. And I think that's why people are able to relate. And it is something that is important to them. And they get my lyrics tattooed on them and my likeness tattooed on, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But it's just the same for me. I've got Joe Strummer from The Clash tattooed right here.
I got to see them at Bonds 3 of the 5 nights. That was one of the thrills of my entire
I'm jealous of you for that.
I'm jealous of me too, and I went. It was the most ridiculously amazing series of shows. If I could have gone to all 5, I would have. The Killswitch Engage is named after an X-Files episode. Why that X-Files episode? And was it just random?
I think it was just random. Mike, our bass player, is super into to science fiction. He's super into horror movies and anime, and he's kind of the big kid of our crew. And he came up with it. And he does a lot of the most of the artwork, and he had the concept of the band before anybody did. He kind of was the guy who started it for the most part. So it was his concept. But I loved the idea of it. When he said the name to me, it was like, oh man, that's cool, because it's like shutting down the system, hitting that kill switch and shutting it all down. And to me, it very much was a political statement. So when I first started writing for Killswitch, it was a lot of, our first record is a lot of political stuff. And I sprinkle it in here and there, but I try to like branch out and write about emotions, write about spirituality, thinking about the bigger questions of life. But sort of being a revolutionary has always been something I've threaded through all my lyrics. And I think Killswitch Engage really describes that. It's a cool word to describe like shutting down the system. I love it.
And I was watching and listening to a lot of interviews that you gave, and you always give a lot of props and credits to Adam, to other band members, but a lot of people outside of your band, people who would be considered like OG in the industry, they all credit you for changing metal and changing hard music to singing. And it's almost like a word now that kill switching your song, meaning that you make it more melodic, more singing style rather than just screaming and yelling.
Yeah, it's funny. I know some people. It's a blessing and a curse depending on who you speak to, because metal has a lot of elitists, and then people make fun of Killswitch because we do have those sing-songy parts, but I've always loved sing-alongs, and to me that's if you come to a Killswitch Engage show, when that chorus hits or that bridge hits that we've written to be catchy, the audience sings along. You know, I'll never forget, we were in London a few years ago, and I would just put the mic out, and the audience was louder than the band singing along. So to me, it's important because the message gets out there, and you have thousands of people singing this song about love, singing this song about, you know, unity. There's power in that. And I think we kind of stumbled upon that. And I very much have to credit Adam as well, because he was the producer, is the producer. So I would have these melodic ideas, which really came from hardcore coming out of Washington, D.C. Discord Records had a lot of like stuff that was like Fugazi and Hoover and Lincoln, these bands that were doing, they were hardcore kids that were morphing their music into a more sort of intellectually stimulating music that was less about, you know, getting in the pit and going crazy and more about thinking man. So to me, that early stages of what we'd even call like proto-emo, like what gave way to like emotional sounding hardcore, was a huge part of my love for music as well. So I thought, how do you take a metal band that's steeped in hardcore, but also we all were fans of indie rock and DC hardcore? How do you blend the two together where it's heavy, people are going nuts, and then you have to stop and sing along and think about what's happening? So it's kind of a morph of styles. And I'd also have to credit gothic death metal from back in the day, bands like Edge of Sanity, My Dying Bride, which would give way to a band Opeth, which is an incredible band. Those bands were doing the death metal vocals and the singing melodic stuff before we were. So we kind of stood on the shoulders of all those people and sort of figured out, how do we do it with our own signature? So I would come in with these loose ideas that were very creative, but I'm not musically inclined. I don't read music. I'm not learned in music. It's all from my soul. It all just comes from my gut. And Adam, who is a Berklee graduate, who has degrees in music, is very smart. He was able to take my ideas, and still does, and will move a note here and there or help me rephrase something. So it's me coming in as like sort of the Tasmanian devil of like, this is my heart. And he's like, that's cool, but let's sort of change this here and there. And he polishes my crazy idea. So without him, honestly, I would not be who I am today. And he's taught me a ton about songwriting and about melody. So I've got the creative drive, but I'm not the most refined musician. So
Have you changed?
It's like, you know, education.
Have you gotten more musically inclined because of your relationship now with some theory and some, you know, that kind of stuff? Has that changed for you?
Oh, big time. Yeah. I have a good handle on music theory. I have a good idea what makes a good song. And I can recognize sharp and flat notes, which I never could. It took me years to get there, where, you know, I had to sit down, and the past few records I've written for Killswitch, I'll write the melody on a piano. So I'll know what notes I'm trying to go for. So if I'm flat or sharp, I can hear it by hitting the note on the piano. And I've been doing that for probably about 6 years now, and that's changed the game for me. So even when in live performances now that I have in-ear monitors, which before it was just screaming over speakers on stage, I've become a better singer because of it, because I'm recognizing when I'm off. And that's been a journey for me, man, because I actually had to have vocal surgery a few years ago because of that.
Right. Yeah, I had that too, and it scared the hell out of me, but we're luckily, you know, had good doctors and got us through that.
Yeah, that was a scary time, dude.
That's your instrument, you know. Yeah. And the reason why I asked that is because the Game of Thrones mixtape that you guys put together, I had read that you had never heard of the show, and now you have to create lyrics and stuff for this mixtape. First of all, tell people about the mixtape and how that's involved. And because Game of Thrones, the most popular show in the history of television the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and because of that, I became a massive fan. It's funny, doing my research, I watched episodes and just was like, whoa, because I was raised on Lord of the Rings and C.S. Lewis books. My parents used to read those alongside the Holy Scriptures. So I'm very much steeped in sort of that, you know, Middle Earth lore type stuff, Vikings, dragons, all that stuff. So I love that show, absolutely love that show. But how that works is they reached out to us and various other musicians, and they actually give you a guideline, and they tell you, we want you to write for House Martell, we want you to write for this. And they give you certain tag words that they want you to use. So it was actually really cool to get a list of words and then sort of fill in the blanks by watching the episodes and by using my brain and thinking, okay, so this makes sense. This song is about the House Martell being sort of like unmoved and loyal. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I know this topic. This is easy because loyalty is very much a part of hardcore and punk rock lyrics anyway. So I just kind of ran with it. But yeah, it was cool to work with that, man, and to get that kind of exposure too from such an amazing show. And like, you know, like you said, the biggest show in the world, basically. And from that point on, I binge watched every episode, and I absolutely love that show. It's so cool to actually have Killswitch Engage be in the same sentence as that show at one point in our career.
Yeah, I never had watched it either, and then it just kept catching up, and the new season. Then I watched the whole thing at once, and it was, oh my God. First of all, my eyes were ripped out of my head, but it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's like an incredible movie each episode, and then when you see like what it went into and how many countries they were in simultaneously to make that show, it's impressive. It's incredible.
Yes. Wow.
What also kind of make me love your work even more is that you never shied away from rebuilding yourself and growing. Like, I know that with all the popularity and trendiness Killswitch had, you felt at the beginning that you were not ready, and you just walked away, and you literally said it, that I needed to do my growing up. I needed to be a better person. I needed to learn how to be good all the time, because if I wouldn't do this, I would just end up being either an addict, or something really bad would happen to me. So you had the courage to step away without a backup plan, without having like a secured net. You just knew that you had to do it, and you did it.
Yeah, it was a convergence of a few different things for sure, but I did have the wherewithal to know that I was not equipped for life on the road. I wasn't ready for the quote unquote fame, which was moderate at that time, but still enough for me to sort of be overwhelmed by. Again, coming from a hardcore background, a punk rock background, there is no such thing as worshiping rock stars. There's no such thing as signing autographs. That shit was funny to me, you know? And when it started to happen, it was odd, it was jarring, and it felt strange. And I remember talking to somebody before a show. We played in Los Angeles at the Viper Room, and before the show, one of the people who worked for the label said to me, hey, you know, because we're sitting in a restaurant, people are walking by, and they're like stopping and pointing and like freaking out that they saw me. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And he said to me, get used to it. That's what it's going to be like. And that freaked me out. That shook me to my core. And at the time, I was also battling and continue to battle mental illness. So I was having anxiety, and that led to depression. So I kind of just spiraled out of control, and I knew it was time to pull the ejector seat. So I did. I actually left before the tour even ended, and just kind of went into hiding and slowly rebuilt myself, and worked 3 jobs back to back for a good year, and really just kind of did it the hard way. You know, I had to just start from scratch and leave all my starting success over. You know, in retrospect, I would have done it a little different if I knew how to be more vocal with how I was feeling and what I was going through, but I didn't have the language at the time.
Who was your support group at the very beginning of this?
What's that?
Who was your support group at the very beginning of this? Your family, the therapists, your friends, girlfriends?
Yeah, my family was always there for me, but I didn't ask for help. I was very stubborn, and still am to this day. I have to have people around me to sort of like force it out of me, like, you're not okay, we can tell, talk. It's something I'm not very good at, because I have a very independent spirit where, like, I'll get through this. Keep your head down, keep pushing, and then I'll hit a breaking point, and I'll have a freak out. So that's kind of been my issue. So my family has always been there for me, but I've never really reached out to them a ton. And at the time, I was newly married to somebody who was very dysfunctional as well. So, you know, we had a tumultuous relationship. So there was really not a ton of foundation to stand upon. At least I didn't feel that there was. So I took it all on my own shoulders, and that's kind of how the collapse started to happen with me. But, you know, in retrospect, I'm glad it did, because it did really help me become the man that I am today. That was the building blocks of it, not knowing where my foundation was and having to figure out where I stood in this world. And that was a long process, but it all did start when I left Killswitch.
And I just want to share my personal feelings. Obviously, I'm your fan and everything, but being involved in mental health for decade, to learn how you dealt with it and how you came back to the band when you actually had an opportunity to get your way back from the management who invited you in. You choose to go through the whole hoops and take audition after everybody else who was invited to try for the role of a vocalist. And after like 19 people, you came back, you took your audition, and you were chosen back to the band without like taking easy routes. That was very impressive to me.
Yeah, it's funny. That was a happy accident because they had asked me to rejoin prior to that. And I actually turned them down. I said no. Because at the time I had a project with Adam called Times of Grace, and I believed wholeheartedly in that project. It was very much a very deep record that I believed in. So I wanted Times of Grace to continue on. So when I was asked to rejoin Killswitch, I said no. And because of that, I ended up being bar back, studying to be a cocktail bartender in the West Village for a while there, which was another phase of my life of learning how to get back on my feet again. I mean, my career has been like this, and partially my fault and partially not.
But that's life. That's life.
Yeah.
It's also like a testament of hard work and belief and perseverance. And like you said, I read something in your one of your interviews when you say, if there is no hope, I wouldn't be living. Like this is what like an engine behind me, and I'm always hoping that some better things are going to happen. And for all these people who are waiting for instant fame or instant success, this is in 40 years old person already has 20 years of touring and trying different bands. So forget about instant, forget about this ephemeral
Yeah.
it's all coming with hard work.
Yeah, where society is now. I mean, it all started with the whole American Idol generation, you know, like instant fame and fame for the sake of being famous. Yeah, I was definitely and still am very much old school when it comes to that. Like, you have to put the work in. You know, I can remember many nights out in the streets of Providence, Rhode Island, with a staple gun and a stack of flyers and just self-promotion. And sort of that work ethic and that drive and that never giving up spirit has been instilled in me from the way I was raised, and also from that sort of hardcore DIY, do-it-yourself ethos that to me is like, if someone's not going to hand you a show, you've got to learn how to create that show. So we would put on shows ourselves. I would book bands. I would play in VFW halls, play in church basements, play in some friend's basement, whatever you had to do to get it done, to get the word out, pass out your demo tape, and keep moving. And I was like that with bands too. If I've been in 30 bands, you know, if a band didn't work out, if somebody was shifty, somebody was a drug addict, somebody couldn't make practice, eventually I'd be like, I'm out, next. And I would do it with kindness and compassion, but also that sort of like, I didn't put up with bullshit. I couldn't. I just needed the next thing. That drive just never left me. So yeah.
I read there was a concert when you got a break and you played with big band, you opened for them, and you just brought, even though you were not the first band people came to listen to, you brought 200 of your tapes and just gave it away. So that was perfect DIY.
Yeah, I've been doing that. I mean, my first real big band, Corinne, we did that too. We just made a bunch of demos, and you know, that idea just continued on, and Killswitch did the same thing. And we just gave it away for free. We had the confidence that as long as these people had heard us, you're gonna like us. That's that I wouldn't say it's cockiness, but that confidence in what you do. You know, we always put heart and soul into the music that we made, and you know, that's why sometimes it takes a little bit longer for Killswitch to put out a record, because I am losing sleep over it. I'm putting my blood, sweat, and tears into this shit.
And that's the way it should be. There's no other way. I mean, why go half-assed?
Yeah, to me, it's just slowing down like the way that society works and the way that the younger generation sees music, putting on a single. We still like argue over song title order because we're thinking about the album as a whole for those people who still enjoy listening to an album from start to finish. it's just, it runs through every single facet of your life. If you've got a work ethic and you've got a way that you do things, and you know, it's old school. It's
Yeah,
just that, it's
it's
that work.
old. It's OG, baby. Now,
Exactly. Perfect.
speaking of OG, how has the food worked with your mental health? And you know, I know you've sort of joined the ranks of not so much of an activist, but someone who cares for animals and also eats very healthy.
Yeah, yeah. I got into vegetarianism initially through hardcore music. Again, my culture, where I come from. Bands like Youth of Today, you know, had the vegetarian shirts, Go Vegetarian. And I remember seeing that on the back of t-shirts, and it sort of sparked my interest. And from that, it was also, you know, the Krishna conscious bands like Shelter and 108 and Cro-Mags, which John Joseph is a friend of mine, and I know he frequents the OG and has his own sandwich there. So he's always been sort of those guys have always been sort of heroes of mine, because they really used their belief that animals are sentient beings that have a soul and you should have compassion on them. That sort of struck me at a young age. And I also worked at a dairy farm for 2 years in Wisconsin when I was a kid, from the age of 10 to 11. And I saw the way animals are being treated. I saw the breeding and the killing. I saw the, you know, milk machines, and I actually had helped birth a cow when I was a kid and named her, and had to watch her die. So those things kind of struck me as a young kid. So I was vegetarian for a better part of 15 years, and then just kind of fell off and went into eating meat again, and just losing all sense of my diet, and I was in a really bad place. I was eating for pleasure. Fast forward to almost getting a heart attack, and my blood pressure going through the roof, and my cholesterol, and just being overweight and sick and fatigued and bloated. And I eventually gave up gluten, first of all, which was a problem because of the way wheat is processed in this country, and the glyphosate and all the terrible things we put into wheat products. So that was the first step. And then I was teetering on going back to vegetarianism a few years ago, because I always had it in my heart, you know, and I would eat meat and I would really feel it in my soul. It's like, you can't shake that feeling. And I met my girlfriend who is a vegan, and she kind of was like, give this a shot. And her famous words were, when I met her, was, you can eat meat, but you better brush your fucking teeth before you give me a kiss, because I don't want to taste death on your breath.
That's great.
So,
Yeah.
so I went vegan about a year ago, and I'm not 100% vegan. I would say I'm plant-based, and I have fish every once in a while. We were just in Thailand, and I had a little fish, but it's not a regular part of my diet. I'm predominantly plant-based, and because of that, I lost 30 pounds. My blood pressure is better than it was when I was a teenager. I have more energy. I have more creativity. I can think clearer. My mental illnesses, my anxieties, and my depression have leveled out a lot. It's changed everything across the board, spiritually, mentally, and physically. And I will definitely not go back to being a meat eater. And it's something that you have to experience for yourself. And I'm not overly preachy about it, but I think the way that I live, the way that I look even now, and the way that I perform on stage, it's all a living testament to having a plant-based diet.
Yeah, just being an example. Being an example. That's the best way to do it.
And another thing too is it cut back on my mucus, and I can sing better, and I have a lot less mucus in my throat, which has helped my voice too.
Yeah. Vlad?
I also think that vegetarianism is so close to compassion that you have in your music. I remember when you came for New Year morning, right, and you were talking about how many um, DMs you get from people who are going through hard times. And it wasn't like people say, "Oh, I get hundreds of DMs. I don't know what to do with it." You were like almost like sharing, holy moly, I have so much responsibility with my creativity and what I preach and what I sing, because people really respond to what I do, and I really appreciate it. And I felt like you were so humble and in tune with your emotion and other people's emotions, that being vegan is kind of goes together with what you do.
Yeah, I think compassion and harmony and being aware. And, you know, to be honest with you, I initially started sort of getting more on a plant-based diet because I thought about the impact of the world, not just with animals, but our world, the soil, the water, all the things that it takes to produce the meat in the meat industry, and all the pollution as a byproduct of it. It's a much bigger picture than just the animals. And the animals definitely have a part to play in it. And I have compassion for all living things, for sure. But I think people miss the big picture. And the really big picture is the living organism that is our earth, that is our world, the harmony that we have lost over the years. You know, our ancestors, our native ancestors, when they would take a life, they would pray over it. It was a very sacred thing. And you would only take what you need. And you would use every single part of the animal. And to me, that if you're going to kill, if you're going to live off of the earth, that's the way to do it. But nowadays, the world we live in, the diet we're able to have, you don't have to live that way. You don't have to consume meat to be healthy. And I think we are just so far, we're just such a disharmonious society. It irks me and it saddens me that we are contributing to that. And I feel better waking up in the morning and knowing that I'm helping restore some of that balance to our earth.
Doesn't the pandemic, interestingly enough, bring that out? Like you know, I'm in the East Village, and the sky is clear, the birds are singing, the water seems to be cleaner. You find that in your area as well. Hopefully, we can learn a lesson from the negativity that's going around. That if we're good to the earth, you know, I always say it's like Mother Earth was angry at us for being jerks, so she sent us to our room.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, obviously we can see it everywhere. And I'm fortunate enough to live in a national park. I live in the Catskill Mountains. So I moved up here to get away from New York City and to get away from that chaos and that weird energy that I would feel at times walking out of my own door, that you know, we as humans are just not in harmony with each other, never mind just the world, just the way we treat each other. And you see it every day in that city with the homeless people. You know, people just step over them. It's like they're just part of the landscape. That whole mentality was just starting to really grate on my soul. So I moved up here and I live in the middle of the woods, and even up here nature is reacting. Even up here there are much more birds than there were when I moved up here. It smells differently. It's definitely, you can see it even up here in the wilderness. Nature is taking a huge sigh of relief. And, you know, I know not everyone is going to recognize that. And some people are going to try to go back to the way they were. But it's obvious what we're doing is damaging our planet. It's obvious we need to change. And if nothing else, because there's a lot of baggage and a lot of disinformation that's going along with what's happening right now. But I think to focus on the positive is definitely a good thing. The fact that we do need to change our ways, and we do need to change the way that we're eating, and our diets have a huge part of that impact we have on the earth. And I really do hope that it does resonate with some people. And that's why it's funny, you know, like you would think having a healthy lifestyle and a healthy diet would be a positive thing. But when you talk about it online, there's a lot of negative backlash. And I think that's because we're so indoctrinated by the big industries that profit from us eating these things and being so used to having a certain diet and lifestyle. And the whole idea of like to be a man means to eat a steak and to carry a gun and go hunting and all these things that are what man is supposed to be.
We've been lied to so much, and lied to and lied to and lied to, that we start believing it.
Yeah, you know? That's our entire society, man.
Yeah. So we've been lied to about, you know, dairy. We've been lied to about meat. We see the government, you know, giving money, you know, to the dairy industry, and instead of, you know, getting people healthy, because there's more money in, you know, in being sick. There's more money in that. So when people call you a health nut, it's kind of odd, because why are you the nut? You're not the nut. You're the, you know, but it takes money out of people's pockets.
Yeah, it's like calling people conspiracy theorists because they question what's going on in the government.
Right.
You're fighting to raise awareness and to try to make the world a better place. Why is that a negative thing? Why is it constantly being berated by people who criticize? And I think
money.
It's money, but I think it's also fear of change, and fear, and also indoctrination. Like, you know, you take, for example, an amazing substitute for meat, mushrooms. Mushrooms are incredible. You can do anything with them. My girlfriend has gotten to be a master of making bacon with mushrooms, and it's really good. We do, chicken parmesan. Mushrooms are magical. They really are. And
Vlad has those incredible ojikins.
I know that we are addicted to those things. I remember first having those, and her and I were just like, whoa.
Woo!
And we have tried so hard to mimic that. And I can't wait till this shit is over so I can go back and have the real shit, the OG shit. So good, man.
But you were saying about mushrooms, you were talking about.
Yeah, so like there's all these substitutes. And I think a lot of, with meat, is just, they always talk about like flavor and spice. Nah. You can have the same flavor, the same spice. It's just a slightly different texture. And even if you take tofu and you freeze it and you thaw it and you squeeze it out, you can get a meaty texture from that. And it's always this joke of like, meat eaters like tofu, but they've never had it done right. They're stuck on these old ways. And it's all part of the indoctrination and the brainwashing of society. And another thing I have to add to that, which I've been saying to friends of mine, as we get older, we lose our sexual drive. We lose the ability to get a nice stiff one, right? If you go on a plant-based diet,
forget about it. It's back.
Around, your blood starts flowing and you become like you're 20 years old again.
I know.
You should be like a spokesperson for.
That's the thing when I talk about plant-based diet. Once I bring that up, literally, people go crazy and they go, "Oh, so tell me more."
Tell me more.
I'm 61, and all of a sudden, you eat plant-based. It's like, hey, baby, I'm back.
Yeah, it's so funny, man, because I was having a bunch of issues with that. I was just getting old, and that the diet I had, I was getting rashes. I was just gross, like bloated, and not doing well. And down there, it was just like not doing well.
Right.
And now it's like ridiculous. It's great because your blood is flowing properly. You're getting the right nutrients. The enzymes that would clog that come from overprocessed dairy and meat. Dairy especially is just terrible for you. Yeah. And that was the hardest thing for me to give up, was cheese. But now with all of the substitutes we have through the nut cheeses, I don't even crave it anymore. I really don't. The flavors they're able to get from some of these nut cheeses are incredible.
Yeah.
You don't need dairy. You don't.
And just to prove your point, we do a lot of our house-made cheeses, and I call the company that sell cultures, right, to produce cheeses. And I don't have a background in cheese making. I'm not a food scientist. Okay, I know basic stuff that we experiment and we're doing good. And I asked this person, will it work with plant milk? And he literally didn't understand my question. He said, it's going to work with liquid. You just add certain salt or sugar. So it doesn't matter. It's a myth that it can work only with milk. It was such a eye-opening for me. It's off the subject, but I was just proving your point.
No, it's on the subject.
Yeah, totally, dude. It's again going back to that disinformation.
Jesse, I'm really curious. You have 20 years of being on the road. You have plenty of examples when you were not in the highest moods, right? And your ups and downs and stuff. And I see that you now on a very happy stage of your life, and you have a partner that supports you. You are very productive. You're involved in different projects. So is it a myth that a musician or poet or writer has to be unhappy to do good stuff, or you can create when you're happy?
You just made us angry. No.
Yeah, that's a good question though, because I have created some of my best work being very depressed. But and I would even add on to this, my alcohol intake has slowed down as well. And I've even written songs like on the New Times Grace record coming out this year. There's a song I don't even remember writing. I blacked out drunk one night and wrote incredible lyrics. And I remember Adam presenting them to me. He sang the song and I was like, wow, those are great lyrics, Adam. And he's like, you asshole, you wrote them. So, yeah, I've had dark times where I've written really good material, but as I've sort of calmed down with the drinking, I'm not sober by any stretch, but I'm just trying to be healthy all around. And because of that, my brain has started to work better. I think clearer. I have deeper, more intellectual things going on in my mind. It may take me a little longer for that stuff to come out, because sometimes substances sort of give you a shortcut to creativity, but the toll it takes on your physical as well as your mental just isn't worth it. So I can be sad, and I can be in a dark state of mind temporarily, and write about it, and I find myself bouncing back a lot quicker because of the diet and lifestyle change. So I would say I think my best work is ahead of me because of where I am, and because of my happy state of mind. I actually have a better work ethic, and I have more drive. So when I am in sort of work mode, I get a lot more done. I don't burn out as quick. Or, back in the day when I was very depressed and having a hard time, I would burn out and I would just want to numb myself and shut my brain off. So I was doing a lot of numbing back then, and now I'm not. So I think my workload is improved, and I think my state of mind and my drive is much stronger now because of where I am.
You've gotten in touch, you've gotten rid of all the bullshit, and now all that's left is your vulnerability, which is strength. You had said earlier how when we're young, we're taught that meat is macho and this, and then we find out that's all bullshit. It's just just a ploy. But once you find your vulnerability as an artist, that's when you dig the deepest, whether you're happy or you're sad, whatever kind of conflict comes up, I believe, really brings us to a certain place where we can create.
Yeah, it's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom is gained through experience, and knowledge is something you've learned either being taught or read in a book, or someone has bestowed that upon you. And I lean a lot harder on my wisdom these days of things that I've experienced. And I feel like that's my foundation to stand upon now, is my experience, what I've lived through, what I've seen, what I've gone through, whether it's on the road or at home or in relationships or failed relationships. All that stuff has made me who I am. And I've learned to sort of stare at it in the face and not run from it, where I feel like when I was younger, I was doing a lot of running, a lot of numbing.
Okay, so to wrap it up, two things. What's next for you, and how can people get in touch with you if they need to?
What's next? I've got a lot of things on my plate. Next week, my punk rock band, The Weapon, drops our 9-song EP, which I think clocks in at 18 minutes. It's very quick, fast, angry, anarchist punk. That's probably going to piss a lot of people off.
Perfect.
I have an ambient, meditative sort of mental health project called The Way Back Within, which I think I have 5 songs up now, very much in the vein of like Brian Eno, early Brian Eno, ambient, very relaxing, soothing music. I also have an electronic project called Dead Trees with my girlfriend, which is industrial dubstep. That'll be very politically motivated as well. And there'll be themes of veganism and plant-based diet and world awareness in that. New Times of Grace record this year. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm sure there's going to be more to come, but I can't get enough. I'm in work mode. And now that everything's at a standstill, it's the one thing keeping me sane. It's just keep working, keep moving, and staying positive, as positive I can be,
Okay.
How can you get in touch with me? The only thing I'd use is Instagram.
Right.
It's Jesse_D_Leach on Instagram, and that's my only means of communication, social media. I've gotten rid of everything else, and just that's the one.
Great. Well, it's so nice to meet you. I mean,
And I just, Eddie, I just want to mention one more thing. Since we're in this pandemic mode, I was very impressed. One of the mornings I listened to Jesse on Instagram when he was talking about his tribulations, about him not knowing what to do, worrying about unemployment and stuff. And next day, the very next day, I see that they are collecting money for charity with a album, and getting a significant amount of money that they 100% gave to COVID needs. That was very impressive, because many bands, and I'm not saying they're doing it wrong or right, but many bands would say, listen, we just lost a lot of money on a show. Like his band, he's not even talking about it, but he had to cancel his tour, only doing 2 shows. Everything was prepaid and everything. They just went home. So he could have collected this money and give it back to his band, and they didn't. So this is a level of commitment and sincerity that this person carries, which I appreciate very much.
I think it speaks to the whole band too, because I have to say for them as well, we all agreed this is the way to do it. It's karma. It's whatever you want to call it, being a force in this world for change, putting your money where your mouth is. I talk about compassion. I talk about all these things in my lyrics, but I strive very much to live it. And, you know, if anything, we talk about the figure like we put up, I think the last figure was $34,000 raised or something crazy like that. That's only to inspire people to do it. It's not like we're sort of patting ourselves on the back. And, you know, we make enough money, we're going to survive. It's not great. It's not an ideal situation. I'm definitely worried as this thing moves forward because it's my dwindling savings. But what's more important is for the greater good. And I think that that energy reciprocates. You help and your compassion, it will come back to you in other ways. And very shortly thereafter, a royalty statement came in and was able to pay my bills within the same week. So it comes and goes. And Killswitch is in a place, we're not wealthy people. We're really not. We live tour to tour, sometimes a couple tours. But we've always had this mentality of giving back, and we're all very down to earth people. So I think more bands should be like that, but not everyone is in a position that we are where we're actually able to do that. And it's a blessing. It's a total blessing.
But, you know, you do see the people who do this kind of work, the work you're doing, you see it more and more in a scenario where, you know, you could really see the difference in the people who give. And that's a beautiful thing. You want to find a positivity in this crazy world. It's easy to do when you meet people like yourself. And
props to someone like John Joseph, who's out there on a daily spreading, you know, information and giving back to the homeless people and feeding people. He's definitely been a hero of mine since I was a kid, and now he's a friend. But I still secretly see him as a hero too. I love that guy. So props to John Joseph as well. He's a modern day hero, and he practices what he preaches 100%.
Yeah, he's amazing, and he's the reason why, you know, Vlad and I are friends, and that's how that works. And when you're in the city again, we'll all have a bite to eat together. And
don't threaten me with a good time. I can't wait to get back there.
Neither can I. Well, you be well. You know, we'll be in touch with you. This was OG Chat, which is called Behind Closed Doors, which we are. But you go online and find OG Talk on YouTube. Find all of our podcasts on every different platform. So you can listen to everything. Subscribe, you know, like us, all that kind of stuff. For Vlad Grinberg, for Jesse Leach, I'm Eddie Brill. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.